I'm your host, Scary Pops, and everybody loves a good scare. So let's get into it. I've always been afraid of my little sister. I know that sounds crazy, but you see, Jackie is 2 years younger and she's always been an introvert, but she sees things. Even now at 17, she's still tied to Mom's apron strings. She never leaves the house, but she still sees things. Everyone thinks she's special. Well, she always told crazy stories, and when we were younger, she sometimes got me in trouble by telling our parents the most bizarre things about what she saw. She lied a lot. I was always innocent, and she tried to drag me into it. Dad told me one day that she told him about an evil spirit in her room. Jackie would come down for breakfast in the morning with scratches on her back and face. She'd murmur to herself, and we heard things like, "Nasty demon." Mom was upset and took her to the doctors, who said that she was doing it to herself and showing signs of schizophrenia. One time, Dad found bird beaks that were still dripping blood, scattered and left in strange places around the house. They were stuffed under cushions, inside coffee cups, poking out of the air vents. He followed the trail with the tiny feathers and drops of blood all the way back to Jackie's room. My dad went nuts that day. I remember hearing Mom and Dad fight over what to do about Jackie. They sat her down and asked about her beaks. She shook her head violently, chirping like a bird and screeching until they got the medicine down her throat. I was so terrified of her. I kept my door locked at all times. Then I started having nightmares and passing out every time. And Jackie was always standing there staring at me with her pale green eyes when I'd wake up. Her messy orange hair always creeped me out, but she took scissors to it and did a hack job. I always wondered if I'd be next. Mom was really worried about me and that I was going insane. But when I was 18, I decided to move out with my boyfriend. But I'll never forget the last day when I was packing my bags and boxes. Jackie slid up to me and handed me an envelope. She giggled and backed away as I opened it. I froze. There were pictures she'd drawn of me scratching her face and torturing animals. I looked up in confusion and saw her pointing at me with an evil grin. "You're the one, Denise. You're the demon. You come to me at night in your sleep." No, I didn't want to believe it. Even though I did have problems with sleepwalking, I didn't want to believe it. She whispered in my ear as I fought back the tears and disgust. "Just keep bringing me the baby birds, Denise. I like to crunch. If you don't, I'll tell and you'll be taken away." I try to keep her happy, but now my boyfriend, he wakes up with scratches all over him. My father loved to take us on camping trips when we were growing up, especially during the holidays, the Christmas time. Well, for the most part, I found it kind of boring, just kind of loathing hanging around, but I roughed it out. I did enjoy spending time with the family. But on this particular trip, I had no idea what I'd encounter or that I would end up contributing to a scary story. You see, my family were fishing at a spot that bordered on an area that contained the old ruins of a settlement. And me being 15 years old, I decided it'd be more fun if I went off to explore on my own. So I started wandering through the bush and climbing over several outcroppings. But then I came across an old, rumbling house. My curiosity got to me, so I had to go in. I started looking around, and it was fun to find the occasional broken cup and rusty cookware, and just kind of wondering who the family was. Just then I heard children giggling. I thought it was my 2 younger brothers, so I rushed out of the ruins. I called out their names, but they didn't respond. And what creeped me out was the sound of bricks falling behind me. So I turned and looked back, and through the crumbling window frame, I saw several figures whisking past. I decided to be brave, more brave than I should have been. I ran back inside. Just then my heart stopped. I saw 4 ghostly children. It was 2 girls and 2 boys. They were staring straight at me. The eerie giggles were muffled behind their scary masks. They looked like they just stepped out of an old photograph, like from the 19th century. The masks were the style of old-school Halloween characters, which made the children even more frightening. I wanted to scream, but I was frozen. Just then the eldest girl lifted her mask, and her face was skeletal. It seemed to be mummified. That did it. I backed out and ran as fast as my legs could carry me, never daring to look back. I didn't even tell my family about them, and for the rest of the day I continued looking over my shoulder. My father thought that I was sick, and he sent me to bed early, and I protested, but I went. And when I was in the tent with the lamp on the brightest setting, it took me forever to fall asleep. I don't know how long I'd been sleeping when all of a sudden I was awoke by a familiar, freaky giggling. When I sat up and looked around, I realized that I was alone in the tent, and in the distance I could hear my family. They were singing songs around the campfire, and for a moment I thought the giggling had come from those kids.
I found a house on Craigslist that both me and my roommate were interested in renting. We didn't have a huge pool of money at the time, so taking up low rent offers on Craigslist was just about the best we could do right out of college. We sent in a quick request to tour the place and included both of our phone numbers as well. A few hours later, I got a call from the owner, Kim, who said he could have us tour the place tomorrow, but had other tours scheduled for the rest of the week. My roommate worked that day, but knowing he had other people lined up meant we had to see the place soon or risk losing it. So we both agreed that I would go see the house and just take pictures of it for my roommate to look at when he got off work. This wasn't ideal, but it was the best we could think of. When I got to the house on the following day, I was kind of disappointed at first glance. It was far from other houses, down a pretty beat-up road, and the house itself did not look well taken care of. The outside had overgrown bushes and grass all around it. I parked in the driveway and got out to get a better view, but there wasn't much else to see. I stood there in the driveway for a second, debating if I wanted to flake on the owner and pretend like I couldn't make it. It sounds wrong, but I could already tell this wasn't going to be the place for us. Just before getting back into my car, a man called out to me. He came out of the front door and greeted me, and now I knew I was too far in. Kim seemed really excited to show me the place, so I went along with it. We went in through the front, and again, at first glance, the inside was really disappointing. It was very old and even looked kind of run down. As we walked through the house, I noticed more and more things that just didn't look right. The entire place was so worn down, I couldn't see how this would possibly be livable. And I was positive these were not the pictures he had posted on Craigslist. I asked if he planned any repairs or anything, and he started running through a list of things he had planned. He basically named every part of the house, which made it obvious he was making impossible promises. After touring the whole first floor, he started walking me up to the second floor. When we got up to the hallway, all I could focus on was this one door in the far back that had a padlock on it. Then I looked down at the dusty hardwood floor and saw multiple shoe prints of different sizes, but all of them went to a single room, yet none of them were coming out of the room. even if I was missing some shoe prints exiting, I still knew that if they were from people touring the house, they would have gone to all of the rooms, not just the one. This all came to thought within a few seconds of being upstairs, and my heart started beating faster as I got nervous. Kim walked down the hallway, passing by one of the rooms and going straight to the one where all the shoe prints led to. I stopped and stared at him as he opened the door and urged me to come look. He looked at me for a second, but then recognized my nervous face and said for me to come over, this time like he was demanding it. My adrenaline started pumping, getting me to break from the shock and run back down the stairs straight to my car. I pulled out and drove off as the man came chasing me down the driveway. I called 911 as soon as possible, but when they got there, the house was empty. Nobody was inside. However, the room with all the shoe prints leading to it had signs of recent activity, showing that there were at least 2 separate people being in there. And the room with the padlock had a ton of garbage, like food wrappers and old blankets. The house was abandoned 8 years ago, and these people seem to have been living there for a while. I don't know what their plan was to do to me, but it was most likely a setup for an ambush. What scares me is that they weren't trying to sell me anything that day, so there wouldn't be reason to believe I had a bunch of cash on me, and that makes me question what ambushing me would have been for.